A little while back, I made a video about Spider-Man, about what it meant to me when I was a kid, but something doesn't feel right here. That's better. So a while ago, I made a video about Spider-Man, about what it meant to me when I was a kid, but before Spider-Man, there was Bond. James Bond. I am just wearing tracksuit bottoms underneath this as well, so it might be nice up here, but it's not down there. I have always loved James Bond movies, as far back as I can remember. I think I was probably about 7, maybe a little bit younger when I first saw GoldenEye, which was the first James Bond movie I ever saw. I watched GoldenEye and loved it for every reason you're supposed to when you're a kid. It was just exciting, it was fun, it was nothing I'd ever seen before. And then I remember going to a friend's house and my mum called me, being like, James Bond's on telly, and it was Dr. No, and I watched it, and for about 5 minutes I was like, this isn't James Bond. That's not Pierce Brosnan. I know Pierce Brosnan when I see him, and that is not him. Because as a kid, I had no idea that there was an entire history of this character. I just thought there was one movie. Even as well, I remember my mum banned me from watching James Bond. I don't know what I did as a kid to get banned from watching Bond movies. Maybe I was just going around being misogynistic to women, ordering martinis, shooting people. Hi Mama, you alright? I'm just making a video about James Bond at the moment. I wondered if you had any stories from me as a kid, like that I might not remember immediately.
I don't even remember like, the time you went out and Ryan next door sent to you. We went to a wedding, yeah? She was quite angry with it. I wanted to use fun.
Oh yeah, you got me a suit from a charity shop, didn't you?
Yeah, because obviously fun buying the blazer. That's why I'm just so big on you. That's why it looks so big.
The reason why I'm talking about James Bond right now, of course, we all know, it's because Spectre has come out, the new James Bond film, and recently I got to interview the director, Sam Mendes. What?
So you've got any questions on your
on my phone? Yeah, I'm not one of them professional people. I do just have it on my phone, so...
No, it doesn't make you any less professional.
So to sit there in front of Sam Mendes, the current director of James Bond, and sort of ask him quite, I think, intelligent questions about it, and remain cool about it all, sort of an achievement for both reasons. I think as well, like in this sort of scale movie, this sort of blockbuster, I suppose you'd call it, a name that keeps cropping up is Christopher Nolan. Now, is that a thing that comes into your head? Because in this one, you've got a lot of the same team. Like Lee Smith is his editor. You've obviously the director of photography who did Interstellar. Yeah. Is that like a conscious choice, or is that just coincidental, just because you all work in the same industry?
I think that Skyfall had more similarities to a Nolan movie than this does. I think there's a very limited pool of people who can work on a movie of this scale. And so Lee Smith, for example, is one of them. But to be honest with you, didn't think about those movies and Chris's movies that much during the making of this one. I'm just a fan.
Yeah, of course.
I think he's brilliant, and you know he's become a friend and someone I know. And you know, both Lee and Hoyter, I called him and asked for his recommendation before I employed either of them or asked them to work on the movie. And you know, he couldn't have been more enthusiastic about either of them, and it was made a big difference to me. So personally, he's had an impact on it as a friend, but artistically, I think the movie is its own thing, you know.
When I spoke to Sam as well, I wanted to make sure that I was asking questions that could benefit any of you that want to be filmmakers as well, because there's so many things that I could tell you as someone who's learned how to direct and how to make films for the small time that I've been doing it. But Sam Mendes has been doing it for so long and has an Oscar. So any of the questions I asked were for my benefit and also for yours as well, so you're fucking welcome. A lot of my audience are young filmmakers, and I think they'll get a lot out of hearing what you have to say. A lot changes in the filmmaking process entirely.
Yeah.
What did you plan for, and what changed when you were making it, for better or for worse?
Well, the third act of the movie changed substantially, well, once I'd shot the first act of the movie. And I think it's dangerous, and I wouldn't recommend, on the whole, going into any film with an unfinished script, which we did on this, really. I mean, it was finished in the sense that it had a last page, but it wasn't what I would call finished. It hadn't been refined, you know. I had a different level of confidence. I thought, well, I can probably change course a little bit.
Improvise a little bit more.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, be a bit more confident with it.
And there's a lot of lines in there that came on the day. I mean, there's a number of lines in there that Daniel just riffed on the day, and I said, right, that's in.
Yeah, he knows Bond well enough now,
He does, yeah. And sometimes he would mutter it under his breath, and I would say, I don't know why you're muttering it. That's a great line.
Yeah.
Say it, you know, speak it.
And of course, you want to know what I think of the new Bond film. Well, initially, I'm going to say it's not as good as Skyfall. It's not a bad Bond film. It's not like as bad as Quantum of Solace, or as Mark Kermode calls it, Question of Sport. Skyfall fell on the 50th anniversary of James Bond, and because of that, it felt like a love letter to old James Bond movies. It felt like it was lovingly expressing all the stuff that Bond had done before, but then acknowledging that they'd moved on since then. There's so many references in Spectre to old James Bond movies like Dr. No, From Russia with Love, The Spy Who Loved Me. Batista, he's in it, and his character is a reference to Jaws, which is a character from the 70s. But there's not really anything else going on other than a James Bond film, and that's okay, but like, we've come to expect a bit more than that. I enjoy the references, but doing references isn't enough to make this a good standalone film. Just because I'm going, I know what you're doing, that doesn't make it good. I think the best way to summarise the difference between Skyfall and Spectre is that in Skyfall, Q gives Bond his gadgets, and it's just a gun and a radio, and then he says, what were you expecting? An exploding pen? We don't really go in for that sort of thing anymore. Whereas in Spectre, Q gives Bond an exploding watch. It's like they took out all the stuff that made Skyfall clever in Spectre, and they've replaced it with big visual effects and loud noises and hope that no one notices. In the interview, Sam Mendes says that he changed the script halfway through making the film, which I think is kind of clear when you watch the film. It feels a little bit directionless and messy halfway through, because the film opens with an image as bold as the Day of the Dead, like setting up a massive theme, death. Like, that's the first image you see is a skeleton. And then as the film goes on, that theme sort of becomes a bit confused and lost, and the payoff itself isn't strong enough, in my opinion. It just feels like it's been buried underneath all the sequences and the action. Although me saying this, Sam Mendes, as the director, did say this.
The theme of the movie is pivotal to me, and I felt very strongly that, you know, with Skyfall, the theme of the movie is kind of growing old, mortality and death.
Sort of old versus new as well.
Yeah,
that was there.
and this one is legacy, really. What you leave behind you, would you walk away? Is it worth it? You know, have you got something better to do, as Bond says at the end.
So he thinks that there are some themes going on in Spectre that are larger than Bond, about like what legacy you leave behind and all that sort of stuff. They also definitely try and make it a love story, but me as a viewer, I don't think it works as well as maybe he intended it to. It doesn't come across, which might be just me. Maybe I'm just not getting it. Maybe it doesn't resonate with me. Maybe it resonates with other people. Maybe it's just not hitting that sweet spot. But I recommend you go see it, especially if you're a James Bond fan. Like, I still had fun watching it, but I just sort of really pick apart films afterwards. And I've said before, I think a fan of something is more likely to criticise than somebody who's just a passive viewer. So if you are a passive viewer of James Bond, I'm sorry for throwing all this critical, analytical talk at you. You don't need this. Go and enjoy the loud noises and the big explosions. Over to you. What do you think is the best James Bond film ever made? I'll stop that now. I really want to just pose about in this. You know what I mean? So loads. I wish I had a gun. Oh, there is this. Maybe Tom left this here. Yeah. This feels right. It's got a bit of a sticker there, but we'll prop.
Might not be in tune.
That's fine.
There is no strap for this
fine.
guitar.
That's fine.
It's quite hard to do.
That's fine.
Okay. Oh, start again. Quite bad. Did that quite badly.
I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm really enjoying talking about films and the stuff I really enjoy. Maybe soon I'll talk about stuff I don't enjoy, just to shake it up a little bit. Give it a like if you liked, because that just makes sense. Subscribe for more of this, because I'll do it some more. And until next time, the name's Howard. Jack, I fucked it up.